I never imagined a single sentence could split a family so fast or so deep. But on a warm Friday afternoon, just as we were packing for a quiet weekend at home, my mother-in-law, Margaret Dalton, looked me dead in the eye and said words that still sting. "Jacob can't come to the lake house. He's not family." Her voice wasn't shaky or hesitant. It carried confidence, the kind that told me she had rehearsed the line and believed every syllable of it. And before I could even breathe in enough air to respond, my husband, Nathan, stepped right into the silence and added, "Avery, it's easier this way. Just let it go." In that moment, something inside me cracked open, not loudly, not dramatically, but in a quiet, painful way, like glass breaking under a towel. I looked at Nathan, searching his face for some sort of sign that he didn't mean it, that maybe he was joking or following his mother's lead out of fear. But his expression stayed flat, unreadable, almost relieved, as if excluding our child, my child, lightened his burden instead of crushing mine. To understand why those words hurt so deeply, you need to know who we are. I'm Avery Dalton, 33 years old, a former elementary school teacher turned full-time mom. I've raised Jacob since he was 4. His biological mother left the picture long before I entered it. And when I married Nathan, Jacob didn't just come with the package, he became the center of my life. He calls me Mom. I tuck him in every night. I'm the one he looks for in the audience during school events. Every drawing he brings home has our family labeled, Mom, Dad, and me. Nathan, my husband of 6 years, is a man who has always struggled to stand up to his parents, especially his mother. Margaret runs the Dalton family with the intensity of a CEO who enjoys firing people she doesn't like. She has a very specific vision of what a real Dalton should look like: polished, biological, traditional, and useful for her image. Her husband, Howard, follows her lead like a shadow who never learned how to be anything else. Every year, the Daltons host a big family gathering at their lake house. I've been included only twice, both times to take pictures for the family album. But Jacob, he had never been invited. Not once. Margaret called him a sweet boy, but she always made excuses like, he'd get bored, or it's too much chaos for a child who isn't used to big families. I knew what she really meant. Nathan knew too, but he always pretended not to. This summer, though, they didn't bother hiding it. When Margaret announced, with her arms crossed and chin lifted, "He's not family," she delivered it like a final verdict. I felt something rise in my throat. Anger, disbelief, heartbreak. But before I could respond, she twisted the knife deeper. "It's better this way, Avery. These gatherings are for blood family. Jacob won't fit in." I was shaking. I wanted to scream, fight, defend my son with every word I had. But before I could gather myself, Jacob walked into the hallway, holding his favorite stuffed dinosaur, Rexy, and asked in the softest voice, "Grandma, why can't I come?" Margaret didn't look at him. Nathan froze. Howard turned his head away. My son, my gentle, bright-eyed 8-year-old boy, stood there waiting for a reason he should never have had to hear. Margaret exhaled sharply, clearly annoyed that he had overheard. "It's for Dalton family only, sweetheart." And Jacob, in a small voice that made my heart split wide open, whispered, "But I'm a Dalton." Margaret didn't answer. When we got home that night, Jacob barely spoke. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the family photo on his nightstand. I tucked him in quietly, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "You belong, baby. You always will." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. I thought the night would end in heartbreak. But instead, it became the moment everything changed. Because an hour later, Jacob came into the living room, holding my phone, and said, "Mom, can I call Grandma? I want to ask her something." I didn't know it then, but that call would shake the Dalton family to its core, and it would start with Jacob saying, "Grandma, if I'm not family, can I tell everyone about Grandpa's other house, the one with Sarah and her kids?" And suddenly, the woman who claimed Jacob wasn't family hung up faster than I could blink. Before the lake house incident, before the phone call that changed everything, before my 8-year-old son's courage exposed a truth that adults had hidden for years, our life looked deceptively normal. Not perfect, not dramatic, just ordinary. The kind of ordinary you assume will last because you work hard to keep it together. I'm Avery Dalton, and being Jacob's mom, his real mom in the ways that matter, has shaped nearly every part of my life. I met Jacob when he was 4, a shy little boy with big brown eyes and a habit of hiding behind furniture when he felt overwhelmed. His biological mother had left when he was barely 2. She never sent cards, never called on his birthday, never once tried to see him. So when I married Nathan, I didn't just marry a man. I married a family responsibility. I stepped into motherhood with open arms, and Jacob stepped into my heart like he'd been designed to fit there. In our home, we built our own rhythm: morning waffles, homework at the kitchen table, bedtime stories, weekend trips to the park, long talks when he felt scared or unsure. He called me Avery for the first few months, then Avi Mom for almost a year. But one night, right before kindergarten, he ran to me after a nightmare, wrapped his arms around my neck, and whispered, "Mom, I want to sleep with you." That was when the title truly sank in. Not just a word, but something sacred. Our home was warm and loving, but outside our walls, there was another world. Nathan's parents, Margaret and Howard Dalton, controlled more of our relationship than I ever admitted. Margaret was the kind of woman who carried herself like a retired pageant queen and a small-town politician combined. She cared about appearances, family photos, matching outfits, grandchildren who reflected her legacy. She had a vision for what her family should be, and Jacob, my sweet boy, didn't fit her mold. To her, he was Nathan's past mistake, a reminder of a marriage she pretended didn't exist. She never said those words out loud, but she never needed to. Every strained smile, every forced compliment, every passive-aggressive comment about Jacob's energy or sensitivity said it for her. Howard, her husband, was the kind of man who stayed silent until he didn't want to be. He was polite on the surface, but there was something closed off about him, like he carried secrets he never wanted anyone to ask about. And as Margaret's shadow, he followed quietly behind her judgments. Nathan loved Jacob. I never doubted that. But Nathan also had a lifetime of conditioning built into him, 40 years of learning never to upset his mother. He was raised to keep peace, to avoid confrontation, to do whatever Margaret wanted to maintain what she called family unity. Even when he disagreed with her, he didn't fight. He froze. I used to think that was just a personality trait. Later, I'd learn it was fear. The Daltons had a lake house 3 hours north. Beautiful, rustic, always spotless, with the kind of dock people post on Instagram to look effortlessly wealthy. Every summer, they held a family gathering there, complete with grilled food, matching shirts, cousins playing on the pier, and group photos labeled Family Bonding Weekend. The first time I saw those photos, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Not because I wasn't invited, I didn't expect to be included right away, but because Jacob wasn't invited either. At first, I rationalized it. He was little. Maybe they thought the drive was too long. Maybe they didn't want him around the lake for safety reasons. Maybe they were trying to ease transitions slowly. I gave them every benefit of the doubt. But Jacob noticed. Children always do. He'd look up at me and ask, "Why does Grandma never want me at the lake?" I always answered the same way. "Baby, maybe next year. She's still learning how to be a grandma to you." It was a lie, a soft one, but still a lie. As the years went on, the pattern hardened. Jacob grew more aware, and every time the Daltons returned with new pictures, including new grandchildren, extended relatives, even neighbors, the message was clear. Jacob didn't belong. But inside our home, I fought hard to compensate. I gave him love, stability, confidence. I wanted him to feel chosen every single day. And he did for the most part, until the weekend, where everything blew open. Because that was the moment when Jacob's question changed from, "Why don't they want me there?" to "Mom, am I not family?" And once that question entered our house, nothing could ever go back to normal again. The conflict didn't erupt all at once. It built slowly, like pressure under a lid, tightening with every comment, every dismissal, every forced smile. But the moment it finally broke was so sharp, so undeniable, that even now I can still feel the echo of it in my chest. It started the Thursday before the lake house weekend, a day that already felt too long. Jacob was finishing a school art project, painting a cardboard sailboat, because his class had been talking all week about summer activities. He was excited, his little hands smudged with blue and white paint, and he asked me, "Mom, do you think Grandma will let me ride on the boat at the lake house?" The question hit me harder than it should have. The Daltons had a pontoon boat they used every year for sunset rides, and Jacob had never once been invited. I knelt next to him and said carefully, "I'm not sure, baby. We'll see." I hated myself for that answer, but what else was I supposed to say? How do you prepare a child for rejection that he hasn't earned? That night, Nathan came home unusually tense. I could tell from the second he closed the door, his shoulders tight, his jaw set, his phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline. He didn't even say hello. He went straight to the kitchen, opened a bottle of water, took a long swallow, and sighed. I followed him in. "What's going on?" He avoided my eyes. That was the first signal. He finally said, "My mom wants to keep this weekend simple. She was thinking maybe Jacob shouldn't come this year." There it was. The truth finally spoken out loud. I felt my chest heat up. Anger, disbelief, humiliation blending into something sharp. "Nathan, he's your son. What does simple even mean?" Nathan hesitated. His silence was worse than any answer. Then he said it. The sentence that broke something in me. "Mom said he's not blood, and it's easier if we don't force it." I stared at him, stunned, because I wasn't just hearing Margaret's voice. I was hearing Nathan choosing her words over our son's feelings. I couldn't process it. I couldn't breathe around it. I finally whispered, "Did you agree with her?" His silence was the answer. Jacob walked into the room at that exact moment, holding his paint-splattered sailboat. He looked up at us with a hopeful smile and asked, "Dad, can I go to the lake this time?" Nathan froze. I stepped forward and touched Jacob's shoulder gently. "Honey, come sit with me for a minute." We went to the living room and I knelt in front of him. "Baby, Grandma, she's planning something different this weekend. It's not going to work for us to go." He blinked. For us? Or for me? That question sliced me open. When I didn't answer fast enough, his little voice softened. "Mom, Grandma doesn't want me there, does she?" I pulled him into my arms before he could see the tears burning in my eyes. "No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong." But inside him, something shifted. I could feel it in the way he held me tighter, his breathing shaky, his small hands clenching my shirt. Later that night, things got worse. Margaret posted photos from the lake house, photos taken a night early, selfies with the cousins, shots of the dinner table set for 8, pictures of the boat gliding across the lake, all tagged with, "Real family-only weekend." Jacob saw it. He didn't cry. That made it worse. He stared at the screen, expression empty, then quietly said, "Mom, am I not family?" It was the kind of question no child should ever have to ask. It was the kind of moment that changes the direction of a life. I went to Nathan, holding my phone up to him. "Did you know they were posting this?" He looked at the pictures and winced. "Avery, it's just a caption. She didn't mean it literally." She said it out loud, Nathan. She said he's not family. He rubbed his forehead, overwhelmed, and answered, "Just don't start anything. Please. It's easier." There it was again. His favorite shield. Easier. It wasn't easier for our son. It wasn't easier for me. And that night, while I sat beside Jacob as he hid his face in his pillow, I realized something important. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't miscommunication. This was cruelty disguised as tradition. And Jacob, my sweet boy with the big heart, had reached his breaking point, because an hour later, he came out of his room with a calmness far too old for his age and said, "Mom, can I call Grandma? I want to tell her something." That was the moment the conflict shifted into something none of us could control, a moment that would expose every secret they worked so hard to bury. When Jacob asked if he could call his grandmother that night, I thought he needed closure. Maybe he wanted to ask her why she didn't like him. Maybe he wanted to apologize for something he hadn't done. Kids often blame themselves when adults are cruel. I thought he was searching for comfort. I had no idea he was preparing to expose a truth the entire Dalton family had been protecting for years. It started quietly. Jacob came out of his room holding his stuffed dinosaur, Rexy, by one arm. He wasn't crying anymore. His face wasn't red. His breathing wasn't shaky. Instead, he looked steady, calm in a way that made him seem older than 8. That scared me more than any tears could. He walked to me on the couch and said, "Mom, I want to talk to Grandma." I hesitated. "Baby, she hurt your feelings. Maybe talking to her right now will only—" He shook his head. "I'm not mad. I just want to ask her something." Something in his tone made me pause. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was certainty. I sat up straighter. "Okay, if we call her, it's on speaker. I'm staying right here with you." He nodded. "Good. I want you to hear it too." I reached for my phone, my stomach tight, my heart uneasy. Jacob climbed into my lap as I dialed Margaret's number. The phone rang twice before she answered, her voice clipped and annoyed. "Avery, I really don't feel like arguing tonight." Jacob leaned closer to the phone. "Hi, Grandma, it's me." Her tone softened only slightly. "Jacob, what are you doing calling this late?" He didn't waver. "I saw your pictures at the lake house. Everyone looked happy." Margaret sighed sharply. "Jacob, it's late, and this weekend wasn't a good fit for you. That's all." He swallowed, then asked in the quietest, most heartbreaking voice, "Because I'm not family?" There was a pause, a long one. Then Margaret responded, "Sweetheart, I didn't mean it that way. Adults say things they don't really—" Jacob cut her off, something he never does. "Grandma, if I'm not family, then can I tell everyone about Grandpa's other house?" I froze. Margaret went silent on the other end. Jacob continued, his voice steady. "The house where Sarah lives, with her kids, the ones he buys Christmas presents for." My pulse started pounding so loud I could hear it. Margaret breathed in sharply, a shaky inhale that told me she had not expected this. Not from Jacob, not at all. "Jacob, what did you say?" He repeated himself calmly. "If I'm not family, should I tell everyone about Grandpa's other family?" Another silence. This one longer, heavier. Margaret's voice finally returned, but it was completely different now. Broken, panicked, angry. "How do you know about that? Who told you?" Jacob answered honestly. "Grandpa did. Last Christmas when he picked me up from school and said we were going to the little house. And he told me not to tell anyone because Grandma would get mad." I felt my mouth fall open. Jacob had never mentioned this before. Not once. Margaret's breathing became frantic. "Jacob, listen to me carefully. You cannot repeat this. Do you understand?" He pressed his lips together, then said, "I don't want to hurt you, Grandma. I just wanted to know why I'm not family, because if I'm not, then maybe secrets don't matter anymore." That line hit her like a bullet. Margaret snapped, "Give the phone to your mother." Before I could move, Jacob whispered into the phone, "I love Grandpa, I like Sarah, and her kids are nice. But you hurt my feelings, and I don't want to be in a family that lies." Then, without warning, click. She hung up. The silence in our living room was suffocating. Jacob leaned back against me, his shoulders relaxing like he had just released a weight he'd been holding for years. I wrapped my arms around him, trying to steady myself. "Baby, how long have you known about that?" He shrugged gently. "A while. Grandpa picked me up once when Dad was working. I thought it was normal." Normal. The Daltons had raised their son to fear them. They tried to raise Jacob to feel lesser. But in trying to shrink him, they'd overlooked something. Jacob wasn't weak. He was observant. He was honest. He was brave. That phone call marked the moment everything began unraveling. Not just their control, but their secrets, their alliances, and the version of family they had always pretended to be. And I realized something I'd ignored for too long. My 8-year-old son had more integrity than the entire Dalton family combined. By the next morning, the fallout had already begun. Loud, messy, undeniable. The kind of fallout you can't sweep under a rug no matter how hard you pretend nothing happened. I woke up to Nathan pacing in our bedroom, whispering urgently into his phone. His voice was tight, frantic. Mom, calm down. What are you talking about? No, she didn't put him up to it. He's 8. He didn't even know what he was saying. I sat up. Nathan, what's going on? He didn't answer. He just kept pacing, hand on his forehead, panic running through him like a fever. Margaret's voice was shrill through the speaker. Even though he wasn't on speakerphone, I could still hear her. She was screaming. Nathan finally snapped, "No, I'm not waking Jacob up so you can interrogate him." That told me everything. He hung up, then turned to me with wide, frantic eyes. "What did Jacob say to my mother last night?" I swallowed. He asked her why he wasn't family. Nathan dragged both hands through his hair. "And what else?" I stood up slowly. He told her about the other house. Nathan's face drained of color so fast it was like watching a curtain drop. "Avery, you don't understand. That secret could ruin everything." I stared at him. "Everything for who? Because it's already ruined everything for Jacob." He slumped onto the edge of the bed, shaking his head. "My father told me years ago. I thought they were done. I thought it wasn't our place to say anything." I folded my arms. "But it was your mother's place to tell an 8-year-old he wasn't family?" Nathan didn't look up, and that was the moment when the truth spilled faster than either of us could catch it. My phone buzzed nonstop, notifications exploding like fireworks, family group chat lighting up, cousins asking what Jacob had said, Nathan's siblings demanding answers, Margaret deleting her Facebook photos at lightning speed, Howard going offline completely. It wasn't gossip anymore. It wasn't whispers or suspicions. It was exposure. I opened the family group chat. Margaret had posted a message. "Everyone needs to stop asking questions. There is no other house. My grandson is confused." Seconds later, one of Nathan's sisters replied, "Then why did Dad buy Christmas gifts for kids we've never met?" Another message popped up. "Mom, stop lying. This isn't about Jacob." Then another. "What exactly has Dad been doing for the past 10 years? The dam had cracked. Nathan grabbed my phone, staring in horror. "This is bad. This is so bad." I took the phone gently from his hand. "No, Nathan. This is consequences." He looked up at me for the first time since morning. His eyes were wet, not with grief, but with something like clarity, like he was finally seeing the mess his parents had created. Then Margaret sent him a private message. I watched the color drain from his face when he read it. "If you don't control your wife and your stepson, you can forget being part of this family." He handed me the screen with a shaky hand. I expected him to defend them, to protect them, to choose the comfort of old habits. That's what he always did, but this time, he didn't. He took a deep breath and typed. His fingers trembled, but his message came out strong. "Mom, don't ever call Jacob my stepson again. He is my son, and if he isn't welcome, we're done pretending this family is something it's not." I froze. He kept typing. "You excluded an 8-year-old to protect Dad's secret. You let your pride come before compassion. You humiliated him. And now you're blaming him for telling the truth." He hit send. 3 dots appeared on the screen, Margaret typing back. Then they disappeared, then reappeared, then stopped. No reply. He sat back against the headboard, exhausted. "Avery, I can't believe I let them treat him like that." I stepped closer. "What changed?" Nathan looked down at his hands. Jacob's voice on that phone call. He sounded stronger than I ever have, and that scares me in a good way. Before I could respond, we both heard small footsteps in the hallway. Jacob peeked into the room, sleepy-eyed, hair sticking up. "Mom." "Dad, are you mad at me?" Nathan stood up immediately, kneeling in front of him. "No, buddy, I'm proud of you." Jacob's eyes widened. "Really?" Nathan nodded, pulling him into a hug. "You told the truth, and the truth matters." Jacob whispered softly, "I didn't want to hurt Grandma. I just didn't want her to hurt us." That sentence, pure, honest, simple, was the climax of everything. The moment the entire Dalton family story flipped. Because in the end, it wasn't a secret house, or hidden children, or years of lies that tore through the Dalton legacy. It was the truth spoken by an 8-year-old boy who'd been told he didn't belong. And with that truth, the real unraveling began. In the days that followed Jacob's phone call and Nathan's message to his parents, it felt like the entire Dalton family structure had been shaken loose from its foundation. Everything they had tried to control, image, reputation, hierarchy, suddenly stopped obeying them. Instead of silence and obedience, they were met with questions they didn't know how to answer, relatives who refused to play along anymore, and a new understanding of who Jacob really was in this family. And for the first time in a long time, we weren't on the outside. We were simply standing on the side of truth. The initial shockwave hit fast. Margaret didn't call for 2 days, which was unheard of. Normally, if she was upset, she called repeatedly until she got what she wanted. But this time, nothing. She disappeared offline. Her social media pages went dark. She deleted the Real Family Only album entirely, as if that alone could undo the damage. Meanwhile, the group chat continued to unravel. Nathan's siblings were divided. His oldest sister, Lauren, messaged me privately. "Avery, I had no idea Dad had another family. Please tell Jacob we love him. He is family." But his younger brother, Joel, sent a different message to Nathan. "You let your wife and kid blow up Mom's life for nothing. Hope you know what you've done." It didn't hurt me. It didn't even surprise me. It just confirmed what I'd felt for years. The Daltons cared more about preserving their image than preserving actual relationships. But Nathan, this time he didn't fold. He replied to Joel with a simple, firm line. "This isn't about Avery. This is about Mom telling my son he isn't family." The silence that followed was long and telling. At home, something else began shifting too, something quieter but more meaningful. Nathan started noticing things he used to excuse. The softness in Jacob's voice when he felt insecure. The way Jacob always prepared himself before visiting the Daltons' house. The fact that Jacob had never once asked to sit next to Nathan at family dinners because he always felt in the way. One night, 3 days after the incident, I found Nathan sitting on the floor outside Jacob's bedroom. He wasn't crying, but his eyes were red. He whispered, "I didn't know how much he was holding in. I didn't know he felt like that." I sat beside him, resting my hand on his shoulder. "You know now." He nodded slowly. "I'm going to be better. I promise." Inside the room, Jacob was asleep, curled around Rexy, blanket tangled around his legs, breathing softly. Children don't know how much power they hold. They don't know that their honesty can reveal what adults spend years burying. They don't know the impact of telling the truth at the exact moment someone decides to lie. But Jacob had done exactly that, and none of us would ever be the same. By the end of the week, Margaret finally called. "Not me, Nathan." He answered. I listened from the hallway. Her voice was low, tight with controlled anger. "You embarrassed us. You embarrassed your father, and worst of all, you allowed that girl and her child to destroy what we built." That girl, her child. 6 years of marriage, and she still saw us as intruders. Nathan didn't let her finish. "Mom, stop! You're not going to talk about them like that again." Margaret scoffed. "You're choosing them over your own blood?" Nathan didn't hesitate. "Jacob is my blood. He's my son. And I'm choosing the people who didn't lie, manipulate, and exclude a child." Another long silence. Then Margaret delivered her final threat. "If you walk away from this family, don't expect to come back." Nathan looked at me through the doorway, then said with complete certainty, "We're done." He hung up. I walked to him slowly, waiting to see if he regretted it. Instead, he took my hand, pulled me into his chest, and whispered, "I should have protected you both sooner." In the weeks that followed, life didn't magically get easier. We had hard conversations. We talked to a family therapist. Nathan confronted parts of himself he didn't want to see. But every day, that gap between us slowly healed. And Jacob, he blossomed. He laughed more. He talked more. He slept better. The weight he had been carrying, the silent fear that he wasn't wanted, finally lifted. One night, while we were putting him to bed, he looked up at us with those big, honest eyes and said, "Mom, Dad, family isn't who says it. It's who means it." That's when I realized something profound. The Daltons didn't lose us. They never had us. Jacob's words tore down their illusions and built something better for us, something real. Family built on truth. Family built on love. Family built on courage. And it started with one brave little boy who refused to accept being treated like he was anything less. Thank you for staying with me through this story. It wasn't easy to live through, and it wasn't easy to tell, but I hope it reminds someone out there of something important. Family is not always defined by blood, or last names, or the expectations of people who think they get to decide who belongs and who doesn't. Sometimes family is the child who speaks the truth when adults refuse to. Sometimes it's the person who shows up for you every day, even when no one else does. And sometimes it's the courage to walk away from people who treat you like an outsider in your own life. Jacob taught us all something that day, something I think a lot of people forget. Family is the people who choose you. Family is the people who protect you. Family is the people who love you without conditions, without tests, without exceptions. We didn't lose anything when the Daltons shut their door. We gained peace. We gained honesty. We gained each other. And watching Jacob grow into a confident, joyful version of himself has shown me that telling the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, can set an entire family free. If this story reached you, if it made you think of your own childhood or your own kids or your own family struggles, please let me know. Share your thoughts. Tell your story. You never know who needs to hear it. And before you go, don't forget, like the video, share it with someone who might need it. Comment your thoughts below and subscribe to the channel for more real emotional stories just like this. Your support helps these stories reach more people, and it means more than you know. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being here.